kama kawaida, we like talking to the people. City is one of them. He is one of the people because
one of them what?
Because he is the people. Mundalo Advice, good morning.
Good morning, Buvi.
Welcome to Radio Generation once again.
Yeah, it's been a minute
since you were on this show, but I know you go to other shows.
Yes, but since I was on this show, I was wondering what's happening.
Mpaka nikasema nani alikufukuza hapa? Kwani City alikwambia usikanyange hapa tena?
No, haiwezi kuwa City. It can only be...
Was it Edna, the producer?
It can only be one person from my generation. Yes.
And the way you're looking at me,
it looks like you.
But welcome.
Thank you very much.
Hiyo umeitafuta hiyo.
Nimejitafutia. Mundalo Advice is the MD of Two Cents Leadership Institute. Yes. And of course a friend of Radio Generation. I wanted to say a friend of the show, but clearly wewe umekuwa friends with other places, but we are happy that you find time to come and visit us and have conversations with the people.
Definitely.
Basically, yeah.
Definitely.
So we want to look at, of course, the by-elections, the aftermath, the constitution versus the right of expression, and many other things that we've been talking about for the last couple of hours. Actually, even yesterday, we had a conversation about the by-elections.
Yeah.
What do you make of what happened during the by-elections on Thursday?
I think the by-elections opened a very huge Pandora's box in terms of what is our political reality. Because there is a big difference between what is our political conversation, what is our political emotion, what exactly is our political reality. That came out heavily during the by-election. And it was able to point out in terms of, in the last, preceding the last election of 2022, there was a by-election of similar nature. Yeah, the Kiamba, Juja, and all that.
Yes.
And when those by-elections happened, at that time, UDA won those by-elections, but government had excuses on why the by-elections were lost.
Okay.
But the trajectory and the pace that set went all the way to the election. Now, the similar thing has happened today again, and the government won majorly in most parts of the by-election.
Yes. Now,
the shoe has turned to the other foot now. Opposition has excuses on why the by-elections were lost, instead of really addressing the real issues and accepting the political reality. The political reality is that he who gets better organized wins the election. The political reality is that the voter today is not buying narratives and censors of tribes.
I think it is safe to say that President William Ruto actually does know how to win elections.
He who organizes the election, he who knows how to organize themselves, that is the political reality. President William Ruto was able to know how to just organize the election. Yeah, and that is where he became better than opposition, because opposition keeps thinking that people will vote for you because they don't like government. They are busy banking on a narrative and a fallacy that because people have a problem with government, or because there is hate, that when you sell hate, then you become the better alternative. That kind of politics used to work some time back.
Yes.
But what I was able to see from the 2022 election is that you can no longer anchor your politics on, one, the census of tribes, and two, you can't anchor it on hate. People want something more solid than that. That even if we are not comfortable with Mbuvi, we want you as Mundalo to tell us something more tangible. We are not just going to trust you because we don't like Mbuvi. The voter is quickly progressing, and to me, it's actually a very very good thing. And it also points out the reality that when you go for the election, you just need to be organized and give it to them. President Ruto and UDA were extremely organized.
Yes.
When in terms proceeding the by-elections, they really cut down on the chest thumping that normally happens and is characteristic of governments.
Yes.
There was a lot of coercion. I would look at the language that Kindiki was using in Mbere. There was a lot of coercion to the people. It was not the normal chest thumping that governments always use. I think the only place that I saw a bit of chest thumping and which went detriment to them was in Bungoma, because that is the only place where the election did not go the Ford Kenya way.
Yes.
And when you look at the formula used in Bungoma versus the formula that was used in other places, there is a world of a difference. So the truth is, give it to him. In this by-election, it only showed us that President Ruto is better organized than the opposition, and opposition needs to accept that reality.
Yeah.
And looking for excuses for it is not going to be any helpful.
You know, the great North MP, Honorable Beauty Salachi, was here yesterday, and
yes,
she actually did mention something to that effect, that
yeah,
you know, now that ODM is in the broad-based government, they were able to see some of the inner workings, when the president is preparing for elections.
Yes.
And perhaps they saw that, there is organization. And I remember, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she says that the president is serious when it comes to these things. He even makes sure that he has a tallying center where he gets real-time updates of the
daily,
whatever is happening on the ground. And even prior to the elections, he literally knows what the ground knows. And
she said specifically, the last mile. The president organizes that to some really fine degree.
Yes.
In fact, she was praising and saying that is something that this fellow understands better than the other players.
Right.
That's
he is very intentional. When you just look at how the things go, he is very intentional about his elections. He is very intentional about understanding what the voter really wants and how to go about the election. And something that the opposition did not do quite well in terms of doing their homework, they ate a bait that was so open. Because whereas all the other by-elections were creations of nature, one of those by-elections was creation of man. One of those by-elections was not a coincidence. It was a created by-election. So you realize the Mbeere by-election is a by-election that President Ruto created himself.
Yes, when he appointed the MP to the cabinet.
Exactly. So opposition needed to have thought better to understand why exactly would this be created by him, and would he create a by-election to lose. But unfortunately, they anchored more on the euphoria. Most of what opposition does is euphoric politics.
Yes.
Yeah, euphoric politics of just and sloganeering. Yeah, and whipping emotions of the people. But it looks like when it comes to the vote, the people are not necessarily buying a lot of that narrative. We did that in Azimio and we lost. And I think that was my biggest lesson in politics in 2022. That we kept believing that you can still do census of tribes and win election. Whereas President Ruto was anchoring his election on an agenda, we kept thinking you can really do the census of tribes, and that's what bringing about the BBI, bringing more people from different communities around the conversation, and that way you can be able to garner the numbers. I think that conversation is continuously getting to degenerate. And so someone must think a bit more differently. The more Rigathi Gachagua thinks, insisting that Matiang'i should count the number of kisses, and the other Kalonzo should count the number of Kambas, and he will count the number of Kikuyus, and then JB should be able to count the number of guys in the south. Is it the southern or the eastern part of Mount Kenya?
Yes.
That kind of language is not going to work for the voter of this generation. There's something deeper that this voter wants. That opposition is simply not getting it. It's continuously becoming
this voter of this generation.
Yeah.
How representative did we see them in these elections?
Actually, are you talking about the Gen Z?
There's no other group that can be referred to as the vote of this generation. Yes,
I would actually think I'm referring more differently than I think the vote of this generation is different from the Gen Z.
What you're talking about, if I understand, is the voter of 2025.
The voter of 2025,
as opposed to that of 2017 and
exactly. Like even that voter who voted in 2017 and before, like our elder city here, that generation is also not thinking as the same way it was doing back there. But then we have now a different twist that a city brings in. The Gen Z vote, because there was also something about the Gen Z vote that came out very heavily in the by-elections. And what came out heavily is that because I moved across, especially in the Western region, to just understand how the vote is happening. And I can assure you, I did not see the Gen Z predominantly on those voting queues. They were not there. And that only points to the reality that there is a problem with the young person vote, that our emotions and our anger is not directly proportional to our willingness to participate. And I've kept saying that the young people must understand that we can't be able to have our cake and eat it at the same time. If we want to have questions about governance, then we must participate in creating the governance. We can't let someone else create the governance, then we complain about it. Because we can't create a small corner of ourselves where our work is only to complain, to throw stones, to insult the leaders and say they are doing nothing. But when the time is ripe for us to be able to participate, what are we doing about it? When you go to Kasipul, the winner of the election was a 28-year-old. But was he made MP By his generation, he wasn't. He was made member of parliament by the others. He was made member of parliament by the women, by the older folks in the constituency. When you look at all the by-elections, all these people were not made by the Gen Z. So, and politics in itself exists in its simplicity. Rarely does it get so complicated. What you see is what you get. If the wave is moving towards this direction in a by-election, it is more likely to go all the way to the election. If the person voting today is the woman and the men and people of this generation, it is more likely that it's going like that all the way. So we cannot bank on hope. Hope is not a strategy, because I've seen people saying that, some miracle will happen during the general election. Which miracle is this that is going to happen?
There's a question.
The young people must be told the truth that, guys, we did not participate. So first of all, we have no right to hate or love the ones who won, because again, we are I've seen us on social media deciding on who rigged the election and who did not rig. We can't fail to participate in an election, then decide on who rigged and who did not rig.
There's something you said in the beginning of this conversation. You said that there was the Kiamba and Juja elections back before 2022.
Yes.
And you said whatever happened that time was literally a mirror image of the 2022 elections. Now you said that what we have seen in the by-elections of 2025 probably will be exactly what might happen in 2027.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're talking here with CT, and CT was saying that there's a very big gap between 2025 and 2027.
Yeah.
2 years, we might even forget that there's a guy called Boyd Were who won the election. We might forget, that Wamudende is the current MP for Mbere, or rather the circumstances that brought him to power, or brought them to power.
Yes.
Do you think that perhaps, in a sense, we will forget the circumstances that brought these people, and 2027 is still going to be a very different ballgame?
Rarely does that happen. Where I agree with City is the fact that we will forget the names Boyd Were and Wamudende. In fact, it's not about we will. We have people today, even in those same constituencies, who don't know those guys. We have, because these by-elections are predominantly about the big boys. They are not about the players in their individual state. That's why even during the win in Mbere, it is said Deputy President Kindiki wins Mbere against Gachagua.
So it's not Wamudende.
It's not about Wamudende. And also when you check about our history and our elections, most people who win by-elections lose the general election anyway. Yeah, because the by-elections are voted mostly on the backs of the bosses. Now when you come to the general election, now you have to be you. And that's why most of them actually lose out when you now go to the main election. But what does not disappear is the tempo. The temple does not disappear, and the wave does not disappear. That, at that time, Mbuvi, I was heavily in the Azimio campaign. And that time, I was in the National Executive Committee of the Jubilee Party. And when we kept losing the by-elections, we kept coming up with an excuse. We kept saying, there is something about this, we are preparing better for the election. In fact, we don't want to win the by-elections because so that we can hoodwink the opposition. We kept coming up with these theories that I'm seeing opposition doing today, when the facts were clear on the table. And that's why today I would not make such mistakes again. The facts were clear on us. But we are the ones who kept making yellow look like green. The same way the guys today are now trying to make things look. Because I remember before the by-election, in fact, some of the leaders in the opposition were saying that it will be a near miracle. If government or UDA wins those elections, it would only be by an act of God that is a miracle. I remember one of them being interviewed, and the journalist asked him, what if the election is rigged? And he said it's impossible. He said it's impossible. It cannot happen. So you see, by the fact that you made it so known that there was no way it's going to be possible, you can't come today and look for excuses and say this was rigged and all these kind of things.
But surely
these are actually excuses that you are feeding yourselves with, so that you massage your ego and hoodwink your voting bloc. But it would have been a better strategy if you look straight in the face of yourselves and tell yourselves, we got it wrong. So how do we get it right?
But surely there are pronouncements that are purely political. People say them either in the heat of the moment or it serves a certain purpose then. But even more significantly, it's the people who spin these narratives have a purpose.
Yeah.
If political parties didn't have conflicting narratives and conflicting individuals, because the confusion you speak of is internal conflicts that exist within parties.
Yeah.
There are people who've taken a certain position, there are others who've taken a certain position, and the voice that is usually dimmed is that sane, sober voice that says, guys, this thing isn't quite going the way you think. That voice is not listened to at that point.
Never.
Because there are those who wish to say the things they believe the leader of that party would want to hear. There are those who then will say what they think will position them. It has nothing to do with that election. It has nothing to do with the people they're trying to serve. This is a contest where individuals are now fighting for space. That's all it is. If you look at these by-elections, you're right when you say it is a competition for the big boys. But in my view, democracy and representation lost again. And I'm going to explain to you what I mean. When you consider an election of a member of parliament or an assembly, member of the assembly or a member of the Senate, what you are talking about is the practicalization of our democratic process. Haki, there was no conversation in those elections about the Mwananchi, what the Mwananchi is going to gain, what they're going to benefit. Nothing. So the question is, what were people actually voting for? Because the whole idea behind voting is you're voting for this person because this is the person who represents your aspirations, represents the things that you feel you ought to get. And yet that conversation wasn't there. So what exactly were people voting for? It is no wonder that the numbers are what they are. Because if you ask me, the conversation that William Ruto began prior to 2022 was a conversation just by virtue of the fact that one saw what it did. It's a conversation that people wanted to hear. If people don't want to hear something, you will know.
Yeah.
In the way they respond to your messaging. Now, you tell me. Part of the problem William Ruto has right now is precisely the very thing that gained him popularity. There are these things which he said, and unfortunately some of them were not things that were going to be achievable in a year or two. But he didn't say this. In the manner in which it was presented as though the day after tomorrow, you will see it. Now, any practical person will realize, forget 100 dams. You cannot even build one dam in a year. It doesn't work. A water pan you can, okay? But not a dam. Now, how do we talk about 2025 and the nuances that currently exist? And if I'm to go with the narrative that the citizenry, who is the voter, is now, the term used is woke, then this cannot be representative of 2027 for this very reason.
Yeah.
We wake up in our political arithmetic when there's a presidential election, not when you have all these, whether it's a National Assembly, County Assembly.
By elections.
No. The presidential election is what galvanizes people, because the presidential election, you have election of governors. Senators are considered almost irrelevant when it comes to this particular equation. They don't move the needle. Members of parliament move the needle. But members of parliament, you can draw a direct line between the presidential candidate, governors, and members of parliament. You can see this. You can actually see it. But again, in the absence of a conversation right now about what it is that the members of parliament or these representatives want to do for the people, if somebody comes up with a conversation that actually deals specifically about what it is that can be done for people realistically, because the group that calls itself the United Opposition aren't doing it, the president is at it again. He's at it again. And this time he has moved from dams to making the country a what? A first world nation. Now, there are no details as to how this thing is going to be done, but it's something that catches one's attention. Now, you tell me, when I say that between now and 2027, is it 27 or 25?
27.
This is 25.
We're now in 25.
Okay,
Yeah.
27. That it is a long march. I mean it. Because there are all these issues that are up in the air, and none of them seem to have been resolved. Now, who is going to find a clear path that can be explained? Because the president is going to be drawn back by the promises that many people feel he made and did not keep. Circumstances notwithstanding, nobody's going to look at that. Circumstances that he found before he became president, nobody's going to look at that. They're looking at the promise was made and what we expected wasn't there. So here we are with a by-election. Even now, this conversation that we're having is beginning to die off. By the end of this week, it will not be a very serious conversation. But the conversation about what the people should gain, there's silence on that front. Absolute silence. You do not hear not even a squeak.
You see, for me, and perhaps because Mundalo has vied before, you have vied, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to political rhetoric,
Yes.
specifically when you're campaigning to the people, what is usually the one thing that they would want to hear? Because like CT is saying, we'll all go there sloganeering and say one term and say the way this government has done what, but we never really get granular on what exactly we will do for the people.
Yeah.
Maybe you can let us know. Nini inapitianga kwa akili ya politicians wakiongelesha wa Kenya?
You see, when a politician is on top of the podium, the one thing that he wants to whip is emotions, because you want reactions. Now, reactions rarely come courtesy of agenda. They come courtesy of emotional whipping. Yeah. And that's why you hear those slogans and all that always happens when the politician is on the podium. But what I'm saying is that as time has kept moving, yes, there is the need for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But these people also want it to be backed up by something. Half of what City said, I wish it would be recorded and played in a strategy meeting of the United Opposition. Because he has simply laid out clear strategy for them. Because he's saying that, look here, there are these shortfalls that have happened, that maybe there are these government promises that have not been able to be achieved and all that. But you see, the mistake that the United Opposition keeps making is that it only speaks of the problem without offering any alternative. And that's why so far President Ruto continues to look better than them in the face of the public. Because when you look at it, President Ruto has a promise.
Yes.
Yeah? He has a promise. He has something. Whether it looks feasible for now or not, he is anchored on a promise. And every day he is doing something that relates to his manifesto. Whether it is in its 100% or not is a question of another day.
Or 1%.
Or 1%. But he's being able to tell these people that, look here, this is housing. Right?
I promised I'm doing it.
He is launching, when you go to Machakos County, and I was at Syokimau about a week ago, and those houses are ready for launch. They are there. They are practical.
You can see them.
You can see them. They're not a mirage. Yeah? He's telling the people that this is SHA. Okay?
With very many problems.
Let us now talk about whether it's working or not. And we are divided in the middle in terms of who thinks it's working and who thinks it's not. So he's able to tell you that I promise that I'll change this thing from NHIF to SHA.
And I have done it.
And this is it. Next year, the first graduates of the Open University of Kenya will be graduating from the Open University. The Open University is offering courses at half the fee of normal universities. This is a promise that he was able to have in the manifesto, and the people who are studying there are real human beings, real Kenyans.
Mutaona wakivaa kofia.
They will be graduating in their reality.
Yeah.
Yeah? So these are the things that we're talking about, and these are the things that President Ruto is speaking about, and these are the things that opposition does not have things it can point at. They are only saying that this SHA is not working without tangible proof. Yeah? They are only saying that housing is a bad agenda without tangible proof of saying, okay, what is then the alternative? Because the normal Kenyan is also asking themselves, seated in a corner, and they are saying, this housing has been a conversation we have had since the Kibaki era. And at one point, Raila Odinga was really castigated because at one point people were saying that he wants to be president, and yet there are even no houses in Kibra. Now, President William Ruto is actually dealing with that housing problem that we talked about in its reality. So it is not a mirage. And now that is where opposition finds themselves shot in the leg. Now, for you to know how bad this is, Mbuvi, President Ruto is the first president of Kenya who had an uprising to the level of a Gen Z uprising not more than 2 years ago. And it happened twice. Now, by public perception, that should be a very unpopular person. When that same person wins a by-election today, you can't push it under the carpet. You must be able to look at it and feel like there is something, there is a communication here.
Okay.
By-elections and referendums decide the tone and the poise and momentum of election. And that is why President Kibaki, in whatever thing he had done, when he faced the referendum and lost the referendum, it went all the way to 2007 and got us into post-election violence because the momentum was decided at a certain level. Yeah, so there is near 60-70% of decision making that is happening now in this country. And one of the things I've often said that President Ruto is the easiest president to beat in an election, but he's also the hardest, because you simply need to understand what is your alternative plan, and when you sell that, you can be able to beat President Ruto. The problem is no one is selling that. And President Ruto has continued looking practical in his things because he's being able to launch. Yesterday, was it yesterday or the other day? He launched the Rironi Mausamit Road.
Jana.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
Yes.
Now, myself and the people from Western Kenya who are always stuck on this traffic movie for a whole 2 days in December, going back to the villages. In the event that road is actually ready by 2026, as President Ruto says, when those people are driving down the road and going without those traffic jams, what will be going on in their heads? What decisions will they be thinking about? When President Ruto launches a road that goes to Kalonzo Musyoka's home, what do you think is the public perception that looks at it and feels like, wait a minute, but this guy was vice president? What really happened? So what I'm trying to say is that President Ruto is not necessarily the best in the coming contest, but in terms of comparison with the people who are actually pulling up similar weight to reach out for the presidency,
no one compares.
No one is comparing to him. And it's in two folds. In terms of one, the promise that he made. You know, City, it is only you, myself and Mbuvi who have the intellectual capacity to maybe look at a manifesto in its percentages of implementation.
That is exactly not true.
Now,
go on.
Now, in reality, when you come down here, people are not necessarily interested in these percentages of implementation. It's about were houses promised? Are they here? Is this SHA? Is this the university funding model? Is this the open university? And that's what I'm talking about. We have reality of things that he has actually been able to do. Percentages notwithstanding. Now, the people who are now against him, the question becomes, what is the alternative? Because the moment William Ruto continues speaking about his plan and what he is doing, you really are not going to beat him through saying one term. You're not going to beat him through pushing emotions and hate. You're only going to beat him by offering an alternative. People want to understand that if there is a problem with SHA, what is the complexity of what now you want to offer? And that's the conversation people want to have. And the person who strikes that conversation can be able to now have the day. And another thing is, away from that, there is now the political aspect of it. Political organization. Which President William Ruto is again proving to be a better politically organized person than these guys. He is able to understand his numbers. He is able to understand that you can. He's having his polls way before and working on them. He's facing the reality of the vote. He's talking about what City said when he was speaking at some point, when he said that people address the leader and they tell the leader what the leader wants to hear. Now, President Ruto seems to be different in the event that he is taking the political reality that you are unpopular here and you are popular here. And he has made it a culture that his people can actually face him and tell him this truth. Because it's only from political reality that you can then work on yourself. But as long as you keep massaging your ego as a party leader and you want to be told the best thing. I have run for elections before, Mbuvi, and I'll tell you, almost all people who run for elections are told they are winning. Even the one that you know,
hakuna kitu.
If you get to him, you'll be shocked at the things he thinks, because the people around him only tell him when he goes somewhere and people boo him, and they tell him they don't want to listen to him, his supporters and the people around him tell him those guys were paid by our opponent, and now that becomes a soothing message. So it's not about the people are not having a problem with you, it is the opponent that paid them. When you go somewhere and the census is showing that the opinion poll is showing that you are doing very badly here, you have no grounding, people don't even seem to know you, the people around him tell him that poll was sponsored by our opponent. So there is always a calming effect that gets you as an aspirant. Until you learn to accept the truth as an aspirant, until you learn that your people can actually face you and tell you the reality, you can't get so far. You can only get so far. And that's the difference between President William Ruto and these other ones. He understands his political reality, not just from the people who brief him, but also because he has seen it. He saw an uprising in this country, a whole uprising that almost shut this country down. So he knows his political reality, and he is willing to work on that political reality. But now the anchorage of the opposition is that the reason they believe they are going to beat William Ruto is because the people hate William Ruto. And that is not that strategy. I think
not enough.
Is not enough because they are actually banking on hope, and hope is not a strategy.
We hapo break hearts the United Opposition wote.
Yeah, and now when you tell them this truth, they again say you are trying to shape a certain narrative. You know, there's always a consoling message you can always give yourself, movie. Always a consoling message. When you lose, even when you fail exams, there's always a consoling message. But they have to meet the reality, the political reality. Also, the reality
that is facing the opposition is they do not have the instruments of power that the president has. So when the president implements all these housing projects, SHA and whatever it is, there's nothing really much Matiang'i, for example, can do. All he can do is just criticize the project because you'll be like, okay, umeleta SHA, but SHA iko na shida na shida. Matiang'i hezi toa SHA yake tofauti.
Yes.
Unless now he opens his own insurance company and gives people free medical cover.
But movie,
yeah,
President William Ruto in his preceding election 2022.
Yes.
Azimio, we had government. Yeah? We had that advantage that you're talking about.
Right.
But he sold something called the bottom-up economic transformation model or something like that. Yeah? And he anchored it on a promise that became believable.
Yes.
And it is courtesy of that promise that President Ruto sits in State House today. So when you are running for president, it is not the responsibility of your opponent to give you what to talk about, to give you a narrative that works for you. It is your own responsibility to come up with a plan that works.
Right.
So President Ruto cannot be blamed for opposition's lack of a plan. It is the responsibility of opposition to come up with a plan.
Do you really believe the opposition doesn't have a plan? They might not be as good as you were saying in terms of organizing for by-elections and perhaps even the main election.
Yeah.
But do you think all these brains of Dr. Fred Matiang'i and Kalonzo Musyoka, Naiki Nagashagwa, Honorable Martha Karua, watu nadhani hawana plan?
So far, I can only talk about the politics as I have seen it, movie. I don't know about their future.
Okay.
But I can only talk about their present and their past because that is what I have seen.
Okay.
And what I have seen so far is I have not seen a plan. In fact, they have told us themselves that they intend not to have any plan. Their plan is just to make Ruto one term. They have said that themselves. Every time they have been pushed to say, can we have a conversation around any real issue? They have delinked themselves and said, no. Our only conversation is the issue of one term. And remember, part of the reason I think this plan of opposition continues to become a moving target is that opposition is made up of people who are a conglomeration of people who are from very diverse background. I try to imagine how Martha Karua is supposed to resonate with Gachagua. And then the same Gachagua they are now supposed to resonate with Kalonzo. Like, these are not people, you know people by the people they actually work with. And there are people you can easily tell that these ones can be able to work together. These ones can actually be able to resonate. But I find the assembly of people in the opposition, apart from the unity of purpose of we want to get out President Ruto, I don't see them looking alike in many other fronts, in very many other fronts, because I don't know whether you see it differently, but I really do not see them, and that's why every other time they keep disagreeing on now they are disagreeing on what Rigathi said about his agreement with Kalonzo on Nairobi, and Kalonzo has now dismissed him. And it's because I don't even think Rigathi really meant it to say it the way he said it.
Yes.
But the nature of Rigathi, the nature of person that he is, his messaging, there is a way his messaging gets out that is a bit more abrasive and a bit more careless. Kalonzo is more a bit reserved.
He's measured.
He's measured. Actually, that's the word. He's a bit measured. He wants to be sure of. He wants to think about what he says before he says it. Unlike this other one. So, and these two are supposed to work together. And I think that is what makes this extremely difficult, because unless the two people really can agree.
But isn't that what makes a marriage beautiful? And I'm calling it a marriage because eventually that is what is going to be on the headlines.
Yeah.
This marriage of you're different, the way you say things, your perspective and mine are very different.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is what will help us determine the best way forward.
There is where diversity is strength, but not everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. Even the good book says the two cannot work together unless they agree.
Okay.
So there is no way that these people can be able to work together. It's like movie.
Yeah.
We have different hosts in the media space who are very good, but you can't put them together. One needs a reggae show and another one needs an R&B show.
Right.
Just because he's a good host and the other one is a good host doesn't mean you put them together. It will break at some point. And that is the problem that United Opposition faces, because they are people with just even a normal Kenyan look at when someone looks at the leadership capability, the leadership style, and the leadership potential of Kalonzo Musyoka. How does it look like that of Rigathi Gachagua?
Okay.
And how does it look like that of Martha Karua? And how does it look like that of JB Muturi? This is a cocktail that is just too much for it to actually work. So the truth is, my sad prediction is that the united opposition is more united in the word, not in deed.
Is it maybe perhaps because the reason why you're seeing this confusion, let me call it confusion, for the sake of this argument, the reason you're seeing this is because maybe each is still looking to become the main figure when it comes to the presidential ballot?
You could be able to explain it that way and it would make sense, but it would be part of the excuses that I'm talking about.
Okay.
When people have a problem, let them
these guys are damned,
let them face the problem and sort the problem. Let them not look for. There is always something you can say about yourself, movie, and you can soothe your soul. They will say, it's because we are still jostling, and all of us are now looking for. There is always an excuse you would really have. I've seen that now DCP wants to celebrate the win in Nairobi. Yet during the election, they didn't even make us know there is anything they are having in Nairobi.
Okay.
There is always a narrative that you can look for in politics. But whereas creation of narratives is good for politics.
Yes.
Creation of narratives based on the political reality is better, and that is what gets you to the end. But when you just create a narrative that soothes your soul and it does not address the political reality, then you are doomed to be heading to failure. And that is the truth. And some of us kept telling them, even before the by-election, that they were heading towards losing this by-election. Why? Because they were meeting it with more energy than strategy.
What you're seeing, we've actually seen before. This isn't new. When the writer talks about there's nothing new under the sun, it's actually absolutely true. When Ford was formed, amidst a great deal of euphoria, it was clear Moi's era was done. When you looked at the people, the personalities who were behind Ford, this one, Kwisha. We were far from Kwisha. Because that Ford disintegrated as we watched, and Moi continued to reign. It took 2002.
Yeah.
2002 for this Rainbow Coalition. And again, look at the parties and look at the people who are involved. The diversity more or less mirrors. The only difference is that you had legacy politicians, people who had been at this thing for quite some time. And they had been in the political space for quite some time. And they had proven to have leadership qualities. Whether you are talking about Charity Ngilu, you're talking about... you just name the people you want to name. There are people who had been... They were seasoned. Okay? And then again, the one thing that changed, Moi was no longer contending.
Good.
It is the person whom he had handpicked who was standing. Okay? Now, we have a situation where these guys are trying to cobble up something that could prove to be something in the opposition. Prior to the formation of Ford as we know it, the very people who later left the government, those early days, you know, there were two. There was the formation of Ford under Jaramogi. Then there was 97. The two different times when people who were supposed to be, who were in government left. President Kibaki at that time, after people like Matiba had left, Rubia had left, he remained. And one statement that is attributed to him was when he said that removing President Moi from the presidency is like trying to cut down a mugumo tree with a razor blade. Okay? That's how formidable. His analysis wasn't wrong. But there are two elements that play into all these things. Time, that we sometimes refer to as a season, and how time influences not just thought processes, but the learning process that people have. If that process of Ford breaking up into Kenya, Asili, and whatever else it broke up into had not happened, the Rainbow Coalition would not have been possible. There was something to learn from that one. It was understood. The only way you win this is if you all come together and stay together. So you bring in your competencies and the support that you have from the regions that you come from. And then the choice of leader was also one that people could resign themselves to. Kibaki, people felt, this guy's been at this thing long enough. You may not have liked certain things, but you figured, this guy's been at this thing long enough. So there are all these things that played into it. Now, if we mirror that into what we have now, I will leave it for those who are listening to figure that one out for themselves. I will not speak much on it. But this is what we have. That they are the united opposition seems to me like they are beginning to formulate something. But that something is far from being formulated.
Yeah. So, Mundalo, what you're saying is basically if we were to hold elections today, for some strange reason, united opposition hakuna kitu anaona.
Yeah, if we were to hold elections today, I can assure you, united opposition first will not be united. So they will have more than one candidate if you hold elections today. If you say, go, let's now register the IEBC and we hold elections tomorrow, you'll not see that thing called united opposition. It's only united in the word.
Okay.
But in terms of now the reality, no, they have no strategy yet. They are only operating on euphoric thinking that hate can actually give you the presidency, which is unlike it. And that's why when you look at the biggest losers of the by-election, most of them actually come from the united opposition. Because if you ask me, Mbere election was for Rigiji to win. It was the stamp of authority that indeed I'm not just the self-proclaimed king of the mountain. I am the king of the mountain. That, and to me, even by fact that he went there and camped there for an entire week, was already weakness in itself, because I felt that this election, even if UDA had been able to have a good margin of 1,000 votes or 500 votes, it would be good enough in Mbere, because it was Rigiji's to lose. So the fact that Rigiji actually lost that election was quite an egg on his face in terms of his politics and his dominance and his proclamations in Mount Kenya. So for me, he was the first biggest casualty of these by-elections. Another person who is a casualty of the by-election, in my view, is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula.
Okay.
Because in a by-election that was not just happening in his region, but in his own ward where he was a voter.
Where he actually voted.
Losing that kind of election is not very good news, especially as a person claiming to be a principal in the government. Because soon we will be able to be having people in ODM who have won Kasipul starting to ask themselves why this speakership, is it supposed to be this side or this side? That is our political reality. Yeah, an election of that nature, especially it's a ward election, is 3,000 or 4,000 votes. Moses Wetangula losing it is an egg on his face, especially losing in all the polling stations. I don't know the way over there. He lost in all the polling stations, including where he voted. Now, that is quite an egg on Wetangula's face. So I feel he's also one of the major casualties, especially by fact that he did not fold his party. Remember, there was a time then ANC folded and joined UDA. And I dare imagine that if ANC went Malava way, if it was ANC in itself, probably it would have lost. But without the strength of UDA, now that was able to have a win. So how then does Moses Wetangula justify the fact that he did not fold his party? And so that makes him a casualty. The third casualty of this by-election movie to me is ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, because Edwin Sifuna has created a brand that is anchored on populism. And the populist politics that ODM has played along is that every time ODM gets into trouble, he wins, because then he can keep rehearsing and repeating the narrative that he has kept saying, that you see, I have kept warning you people. You see, I have kept saying this. I have kept saying it's wrong for us to be in this broad-based. I have kept. So for every loss ODM gets, the SG succeeds. And that is how he has anchored his politics lately. Now, the win in Kasipul is not very good for him, because it kind of elevates Gladys Wanga, who becomes a big winner of that by-election. Sifuna not having participated actively in that by-election, and yet ODM wins, gives him an egg. And then to make it worse, ODM loses in Nairobi, where Sifuna is the senator.
Yes.
So if anything, if for nothing, then he needed to at least win Nairobi, where he is the senator. Fact that ODM loses Nairobi to DCP does not again portray this guy in very good light, because for him, Sifuna is supposed to continue being strong. His strength and the capacity of his strength is anchored on the failures of ODM. The more ODM fails, the more he becomes better. So this by-election, with the wins of the broad-based government and the wins that ODM gets through broad-based, puts an egg on Sifuna's face, and it more or less makes the ODM member and the voter ask themselves, what exactly was the role of this SG in all this?
Right.
Where exactly did he? In fact, to make it worse, the only place he tried to appear was in Malava, where he appeared to support Panyako, where again there was a loss. So again, it makes someone wonder, is this guy popular or it's paper fire? So that makes him one of the biggest losers again in the by-election, whereas the winners are obvious. And if you ask me, the biggest winner of the by-election is Professor Kithure Kindiki, because for a long time we have kept imagining that he's more professorial, nothing huge politically.
Actually, people to an extent just made him look like he was literally nothing apart from a title.
Apart from him being a title and a professor.
That was a mistake. Do you know what it takes for somebody to be a professor of law and have a PhD?
We're not talking about his academics.
No. I'm not talking about his academics either.
Yes.
The academics is a manifestation of the brain the person has.
Exactly.
So if that person used that brain and focuses on politics, that is what was ignored. Because the discussion around Kindiki was to ridicule him.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say that this is what you were mentioning earlier on.
Yeah.
What you focus on, what is interesting to listen to, the ridicule, calling him names and so forth. And you're forgetting, this person is not an idiot.
True.
He may not have been in politics long enough, but he is not. He has actually been elected.
In fact, he has actually been there longer than Rigathi.
He has.
He has been in politics longer than Rigathi. But you see, I told you, when you go to the podium, you say things that people wanna that bring clapping and all that. So when you say soprano and you say such kind of thing, and that's what we're anchored on, and we forgot the reality of what City is saying, that this guy, one, has been here long enough, he's politically experienced, and he's not dumb. By the fact that he's a professor means something. Now, Kindiki just proved that in the by-election. He proved that he is more than what you are imagining him to be. He is not just some other guy who was selected. No, he's politically very strong, and he can actually command the vote, and he can actually marshal people, and he can actually deliver the vote. So to me, he's the biggest winner of the by-election, because I tend to think that at some point people thought that most political players would think it would be obvious that President Ruto in 2027 will pick another running mate. But with that win in Mbeere, there is there is enough evidence for Kindiki to put on the table. Because how else do you prove that you can actually marshal numbers? You only prove through an election. So it continues to be a difficult thing, especially for the
president. One thing about results, you can't generalize. You have to be specific about the places you speak of, and you have to speak of dynamics in terms of voter presence. You have to speak of ethnicity. These are the things you need to think of. Because if, for instance, somebody vies for a certain position within Nairobi.
Yeah.
And there's a certain ethnic preponderance in that particular region. A party that is aligned to that ethnicity and the individual standing with that party is more likely to win than somebody who is not. It's not even complicated. Okay? If you look at some of the places, like, say, if we give an example of, say, Narok, okay? And you look at some of the members of the MCAs we have there, and you look at an election, you have to ask a similar question, because there are ethnic groups that are represented in some of these major places.
Yes.
For instance, if you talk about, say, a place like Juja, to assume that it's only the people who are native to that particular place who vote, you'd be wrong.
True.
The other communities, they're Kambas, they're Luas, they're Luyas, they're Kisis. Okay? Where will they vote? And what percentage of the vote? Now, anybody who does not consume granularized data of that nature when trying to pitch or trying to secure position, you will get it absolutely wrong.
But anyway, if we take that into consideration and take what he has said into consideration, and then go back to what DCP leader had said a couple of weeks back, he had said that he had told the country that he has that area locked. The entire Mount Kenya region locked, and I think he mentioned something to the tune of 8 million votes.
Yes, 8 million strong.
So clearly, they are not 8 million strong.
Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. This has really, it's a big, that's why I call him the biggest loser of the by-elections, because Rigiji had successfully given it to him. He had created a narrative that had become so sellable,
and we had bought it.
We had bought that narrative, especially everyone else who is not from Mount Kenya, especially within the leadership even of the opposition.
Yes.
He had made it look like, I have already done my work, you do yours.
Yeah.
He had already made everyone feel like when he's talking to the media, he wants to guilt trip Matiang'i and tell him to go and count the kisses that he has.
Now I'm sure Matiang'i alimtext akamwambia,
we need to talk.
Paul, let me tell you something that you need to consider even as we finish.
10 seconds.
Matiang'i is more of a leader of his people than Rigiji is. You know why?
Yeah.
Have you seen Matiang'i on a podium claiming any leadership? Have you seen him going about talking about the things he's going to do? And yet, if you talk to people from his region, they're telling you it is Matiang'i.
Yes,
they are the ones. They are telling you, not Matiang'i telling us, my people are behind me.
And that's exactly what leadership is about.
Right.
It's not about your proclamation. It's about what the people decide. When the people say you are their leader, you are more their leader than when you are the one who keeps insisting
declaring
and reminding them. Before they sleep, you have to again have an interview and remind them again that you are their leader. The more you remind people that you are their leader, the more you the
less you are.
The more you are actually not.